Hello and welcome. Today we'll be talking about the case of Teddy Thompson, a child of about 4 years old who went missing back in 1938. This case is featured in Missing 411, which is the only reason why I'm covering it. You'll see why I thought that was necessary at the end of the video. The wilderness surrounding Covello in 1938 was vast and wild. It was infested with bobcats, mountain lions, deer, and all manner of game. Wild hog and panther attacks were often reported in this area, but instances of bobcat and mountain lion attacks were relatively rare by comparison. A number of water features are throughout this rugged landscape, and the nearest place, the Thompson home, that could be remotely considered frequented by other people was the hunter's campsite of Ham's Camp, which I could not locate on a current map. We do have sources that indicate that Covello was about 13 miles away from the Thompson family home. Teddy Thompson was the child of his parents, Mr. and Mrs. Charles Thompson. His father worked as a forestry worker, and their home was adjacent to the Eel River. In January of 1938, Teddy was nearly 4 years old. On Saturday, January 29th, 1938, Teddy was playing outside of his home with two of his friends. That morning, Teddy had gotten in trouble for wandering too far away from the house, which caused him to be spanked by his mother. Fast forward to about dinner time, and Teddy's parents had come outside to collect Teddy for their evening meal. However, at that point, Teddy was gone. They searched the area before calling the ranger station across the river for assistance. Storms hit the area the Sunday night after Teddy went missing and did not relent for days. This weather made searching very difficult and made following the tracks almost impossible. Snowdrifts got so bad that they cut off mountain roads and trails at the higher elevations. The storm would become so severe that it would down trees and cause damage to homes throughout the area. More than 100 searchers were on scene within the first 4 days that Teddy went missing. These searchers included Native American trackers, tracking dogs from a nearby prison, forestry service personnel, law enforcement, and volunteers. During this initial search, they located fresh mountain lion tracks near Teddy's own tracks that they were able to follow for a short time. According to the initial reports, Teddy's tracks were intersected by the lions, and it was at this point that Teddy's trail was lost. They were so compelled by this evidence that they called for a lion hunter, who later arrived to track down the offending mountain lion. Even so, the sheriff did retain hopes that the tracks were just coincidental, stating that lion attacks are rare and they typically run away at the first scent of a human or dog. On February 2nd, it was reported by the San Mateo Times newspaper that the district attorney for the area arrived to investigate the feeling of Sheriff Williams that Teddy may have been the victim of foul play. At this point, both the district attorney and the sheriff indicated that they did not believe that Teddy had wandered away and did not believe that a mountain lion had gotten to him. On February 3rd, the Searchlight and others reported that the theory of foul play had already been dropped, even as of the previous day, which is to say, the idea of foul play in any part of Teddy's disappearance was rapidly dropped. Instead, the new primary theory posed by the sheriff was that Teddy had wandered off on his own. He elaborated that his theory of foul play was due to the informal initial reports given to him by his own deputies, but by the time he had arrived on the scene himself to investigate, he determined that there were no signs at all of foul play, and he was convinced the young boy had simply wandered away and became lost. The search continued without much further development, going all the way through February. In March, the lion hunter left the area. A female cougar with her 2 kittens had been tracked and killed in the area, but no clues were ever found as to the location of Teddy. At the end of March, on the 28th, a man named Arthur Carpenter found the body of Teddy Thompson in a manzanita bush, about 2 miles away from where he had gone missing. Arthur had been a steadfast searcher from the beginning of this whole ordeal. The body was partially eaten by animals and badly mutilated. This bush was just 20 to 50 feet from where searchers had passed by months earlier. Arthur would receive a $125 reward for his efforts, which is about $2,700 in today's money. Constable Charles Lavelle said that an examination of the scene indicated that Teddy had crawled into a thick bush in order to seek shelter from the severe winter storm that had swept the area. As a result, he concluded that Teddy had likely frozen to death there, as he was not dressed to endure such cold, wet conditions. The damage to the body took place only after the snow had melted away sufficiently for animals to get at the body, which had initially been completely covered by the snow. Further, there were no marks of human violence on the body. There was an inquest into the death, which came to the same conclusion. Teddy had died of exposure. The funeral service for Teddy would occur on March 30th, which would have been his 4th birthday. In my opinion, the retellings based solely on information in Missing 411 have several serious issues that I feel it's necessary to properly address, and thus is the reason for making this video. In the book, Paulides frames the punishment that Teddy received for wandering away as not just a deterrent from Teddy doing so again, but a bar from such an event occurring unless something lured him away. Teddy's own mother, however, had a different perspective at the time. From the San Francisco Examiner, published on February 3rd, 1938, quote, Mrs. Thompson, distraught, had as her last memory of her son a spanking that she had administered Saturday morning. She repeated over and over her fear that he had brooded on the punishment, had run away to his death as a consequence. I'll let you decide who you think best understood what Teddy would or wouldn't do. Next, Paulides makes the claim that the bush Teddy was found in was not something a boy would willingly crawl into, the idea here being that he was placed there by some outside force. The direct quote from page 103 is, quote, it also seems odd that Teddy would crawl under a thick and prickly manzanita bush, close quote. Well, the problem with that is that a manzanita bush is not prickly, at least not any more than any other thornless bush. The fact that the bush is thick actually lends more credence that Teddy would have crawled into the bush voluntarily in order to shelter from the elements. Indeed, Lost Person Behavior by Robert Coaster, a book previously referenced as being reliable by Missing 411, says in the section for 1 to 3-year-olds that, quote, they will penetrate the brush to sleep or hide, close quote, and that, quote, many toddlers are found asleep inside a structure or in the brush, close quote. Teddy was practically 4, but I think that the point still stands. Lastly, Paulides continues on his typical trend of criticizing law enforcement by stating that the constable who examined Teddy's body was unqualified to state opinions about cause of death. I will again quote from the book directly, this time on page 102. Quote, how did the constable know that Teddy had died the first night? This is ridiculous. He wasn't a coroner. Close quote. I have already addressed that the evidence very clearly points to the fact that Teddy did indeed die of exposure. However, I went a step further and I emailed the county sheriff coroner's office for this area for comment. This is the response that I received when I asked if the constable was qualified to make these statements for the case. In 1938, the sheriff's office was the office of the coroner also. The sheriff's deputies have always been deputy coroners in our county. The constable oversaw the coroner's inquest, in which a jury of 9 individuals listen to testimony and they aid in determining the cause and manner of death. In respect to this case, it appears that upon completion of the inquest, the cause of death was determined to be exposure and exhaustion. During this time, not all deaths were determined by a doctor. I want to quickly clarify that even today, the cause of death is not always determined by a doctor, as not all coroners are doctors. So there you have it. You can't get much more wrong than declaring this is ridiculous, he wasn't a coroner, then, well, actually, yeah, he was a coroner. I feel like I've already pretty well demolished the points that Paulides tries to make in his book, especially those based entirely on his unfounded speculation, but here's a comparison of my research to the book. Points in red conflict, whereas the points in white are agreed upon. This is normally where we would roll credits, but for those of you who are still listening, I want to leave you with a statement from Teddy's parents, recorded by the Corning Daily Observer just after Teddy's body was recovered. Mothers and fathers, let our sorrow and our loss be a warning to you. Know where your little ones are at all times. I'd like to just take a moment to thank my patrons over at patreon.com for their support that makes videos like this possible. Thank you so much. Those of the public recognition tier are on screen now. And of course, thank you for watching. Until next time, take care.